President Ruto said times without number that my administration would not allow these short-term political dalliance. President Ruto repeated it many times. So when I see him entering into this marriage of convenience with Mr. Odinga for short-term political gain, I am saddened. For Mr. Odinga, when you have gone out of your country to seek a continental office which you are warned by good persons of goodwill not to seek, and you come back and instead of reflecting, you enter into what you delude yourself into calling a consultation, then you think that Kenyans are fools and stupid and that you can manipulate them. That is a recipe for chaos, and I'm not excited. This is not the first time that I've seen Mr. Odinga enter into political alliances. He did so with President Moi. He did so with President Kibaki. He did so with President Uhuru. He has done so with President Ruto. And the reality is that we are seeing what I call political musical chairs. We see a group of politicians who have been with us for the last 20 years playing what I call roulette with our country, short-term political gains. When I hear somebody telling me that the arrangement between President Ruto and Mr. Odinga is to implement NADCO. And if you look at the issues they raise, 90% of them are in the Constitution. And I don't hear them talking about implementing the Constitution. Then I know those we are dealing with are interested in short-term political gains. And it is deja vu for me because this was the very basis of the BBI. When I hear politicians telling Kenyans that this is the time for Nilots to organize against Bantus, then I'm afraid that we are not building our nation. So I'm very afraid because I was here in the 1980s. I was here when we were making the Constitution, and we took the view that a new constitutional dispensation would help the country. But unfortunately, the political class continue to imagine that we Kenyans are dunderheads and that they can pretty much do what they want with us. And the net effect is that the country is getting divided and polarized on a daily basis. And all these so-called political mergers are marriages of convenience, where the partners may sleep on the same bed, but they have different dreams. And it is sad that we are seeing what we are seeing. And let me speak specifically to as regards President Ruto. President Ruto said times without number that my administration would not allow these short-term political dalliance. President Ruto repeated it many times. So when I see him entering into this marriage of convenience with Mr. Odinga for short-term political gain, I am saddened. For Mr. Odinga, when you have gone out of your country to seek a continental office which you are warned by good persons of goodwill not to seek, and you come back and instead of reflecting, you enter into what you delude yourself into calling a consultation, then you think that Kenyans are fools and stupid and that you can manipulate them. That is a recipe for chaos. And very lastly, we have a group of politicians now alive in our country who have arrogated to themselves the monopoly of wisdom. They think they are larger than life, almost as large as death. Such politicians can only lead their countries through shortcuts. I hope those of us who are present in this assembly, who have access to them, should tell them the time is now for them to stop flecked. Do they love Kenya or they want to manipulate Kenya?
Thank you, PLO. Let me just back. Do you think coalitions are a big threat to democracy in this country? Over to you, sir.
Let us go back to the history of why during the constitution making process we said a number of things. One, we said that in order to, I don't like using the word democracy, I want to use the word good governance. We said that we needed political parties that had a national character. For this reason, we said, among other things, that these political parties would be funded from the exchequer. It was also contemplated that these parties could enter into coalitions or what we now refer to as mergers. What has happened since 1992 is that the political parties have not grown. They have not grown because even when we have political parties, these parties do not have any firm ideological foundations. These parties, at least the ones that we know, are guarded and guided by individuals. So the personality of the individuals dominates the parties. They may have formalistic structures so that if you are simply to look at them from a textbook standpoint, they pass the test. But when you go beyond the textbook and you examine what we call political parties, then you discover that beyond the party leaders in most of them, it is hollow, which means therefore that we have failed to build an ideological foundation. I give the example of different countries almost ad nauseum. When you go to Tanzania, CCM is a party. When you go to Tanzania, Chama cha Demokrasia na Maendeleo is a party. ACT Wazalendo is trying to be a party. MPA Langola is a party. Frelimo is a party. ANC is a party. DA is a party. But when you come home, you discover that even those parties, they may claim to be national and may have ticked the boxes when they are going through the process of registration. But the reality is that foundationally, they are ethnically undergirded. So that when you are dealing with Wiper, for example, if you permit me that example, the undergirding is a Kamba. When you are dealing with ANC, the undergirding is Luhya, Maragoli. When you are dealing with the DAP, the undergirding is Luhya, Bukusu. When you have such as your political parties, then you cannot grow governance. And that is why they have to come together every so often in order to increase their numbers ethnically. How can we liberate ourselves from this scenario? One, I think that the time is now for some of the individuals who have been in these political parties moving from one office to the other to exit the space. And as long as they are there, and this is what I want to conclude with, the tragedy in Kenya for the last many years is that we have individuals who have suffocated the emergence of other leaders within their parties. And because they have suffocated these individuals, the parties cannot grow. Rivers or an ocean without rivers flowing into it becomes dead. So these individuals will always dominate the parties, and when they go, the parties will die. In other words, we have failed to implement the law or the letter and spirit of the law, and the country is paying for it. And very finally, the individuals that you see dominating most of these political parties, their attraction is public office. And that is why they do not want to leave. They do not want to leave because public office guarantees good life. Politics in Kenya is the shortest avenue to wealth for which no sweat or minimal sweat is expended. It is a decision that I hope we'll make at a certain stage, God willing, and Kenyans taking charge. That is my contribution.